American citizens were asked to vote for Biden, reassured and assured repeatedly up until the very minute he said, "I'm not doing it anymore," that he's in the race, that he's the candidate. And all of a sudden that's gone and there's no substitution that's democratically placed. The big news this weekend, in case you've missed it, is that President Biden has declined and decided to seek re-election. He posted a weird letter on Sunday. No one's seen hide or hair of him in several days now, leading again to a deepening of the crisis because many Americans are concerned who's running the store. Here's the letter he posted. Just an incredible letter in many respects. And, in the center part of the letter, he promotes obviously his work as president. But here's the kicker. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party, he puts the party first, and then the country, for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. And then he says, I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. Now, COVID supposedly has caused the president to social distance, and using that as an excuse not to communicate with American citizens is really quite unusual, especially given the gravity of his momentous decision, and a decision that I don't think was voluntarily made. As I noted in the statement I issued on behalf of Judicial Watch today, I'll read it for you today, right now, and just cut to the chase. President Joe Biden's resignation from the presidential race is the result of a corrupt, arrogant, and anti-democratic process. Biden was forced to pull out of the presidential race as a result of a dangerously, as I say, corrupt pressure campaign led by Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, and like-minded Democrats, which has effectively disenfranchised 14 million Americans who voted in the Democratic presidential primaries. Few Americans will buy the D.C. establishment's scheme to remove Biden from the presidential campaign over cognitive issues while ignoring his inability to serve as commander-in-chief. Vice President Kamala Harris, the majority of the cabinet, along with the American people, need to step up and invoke the 25th Amendment, and Congress should do an emergency investigation into Biden's fitness for office. The assassination attempt on former President Trump adds increased urgency to ensure we have a fully capable president. This is truly a national security crisis. And to make matters worse, we have this coup against democracy, as the left likes to say. We're not going to know who the nominee of the Democratic Party for the office of President of the United States will be until August if they get their way. It's election interference, pure and simple. There's nothing about this process that's normal, appropriate, or honest. A snap national primary or primaries to pick a new nominee would seem to be the most democratic approach to Biden's decision not to seek re-election. At a minimum, a careful state-by-state and federal legal analysis is a necessary first step to help determine whether Biden can be replaced on the presidential ballot at this late stage in the presidential campaign. And Judicial Watch is already investigating this election integrity issue. That the votes of 14 million Americans would be casually tossed aside by Democratic Party elites is a major corruption and election interference scandal. So let's not pretend this is normal. Let's not be distracted by the Democratic Party in almost Soviet-style schemes, essentially installing a candidate for the presidency outside the democratic process. And I know I don't want lectures about how America isn't a democracy. I'm using democratic in the sense of people voting for a candidate of their choice. And so this will be done with no votes in the ordinary course, as has been done in the modern era in selecting presidents. Now, this used to be done back in the day, But again, in the name of democracy, we have eliminated party conventions largely being able to pick candidates absent extraordinary circumstances. And so I don't know exactly what the law is, but I do know what the concerns are. That we've had a campaign. President Trump spent millions of dollars in a battle against Biden. American citizens were asked to vote for Biden, reassured and assured repeatedly up until the very minute he said, "I'm not doing it anymore," that he's in the race, that he's the candidate. And all of a sudden that's gone and there's no substitution that's democratically placed. You know, in the United Kingdom, they had a snap election, national election, and they picked a new government. The Democratic Party can get a snap primary election to ensure that voters, at least in their party, have a say. And to do it any other way, is that the new rule? Primaries don't matter? Because if they don't like the result or the candidate seems to be going south a bit in the polls, you just throw them out? How is that fair? How is that appropriate? Either you have primaries and you stick to the candidate absent a death or disability, or you don't. And again, this is not a political issue. Some people might think Kamala's a better person to run against, Trump. Depending if, and Democrats might think she's a worse person to run against her. It doesn't matter. The question is who decides who's the candidate, and how is that process? How does that process comport with the ideals that we have in terms of selecting the person who's going to be our president? So Kamala Harris is going to be the nominee for president, having gotten no votes from any American citizen to be that nominee in the year 2024? And as I said in his statement, we all know how this worked. Donors pressured Biden, Obama pressured Biden, Pelosi pressured Biden, Schumer pressured Biden. The Democratic Party and their media acolytes carpet bombed the White House to force him out of the campaign. And why is he out of the campaign? It's not purely politics, it's because of his cognitive challenges. So a lot of Republicans are rightly asking how it is he can be the president. He doesn't have the cognitive ability, he doesn't have the health resources to run as president, but don't worry, we can trust him to be president? That's not how it works. And that's why the 25th Amendment or additional pressure on him to resign, in my view, should be applied. Because I think we're in crisis. It's not because I don't like his politics, I don't like his policy. I mean, Trump was nearly killed. Is Biden in a position to run the Secret Service? It's his responsibility, ultimately. Of course he's not. Is Biden capable of making decisions related to life and death as commander-in-chief? Of course he's not. No one believes that. Now, do I trust Kamala to make better decisions? Not necessarily, but at least I know there's not a cognitive disability that precludes her from making decisions on a rational basis, even if I might disagree with them. And I'm not going to say, oh, well, it's better to have her as vice president than president because it's easy for the campaign. No, that's not the way it's going to work with me. I understand why partisans might like that. But I like to think I'm taking a principled approach here, a rule of law approach, a constitutional approach. Because we're in a crisis right now. Our country's being destabilized by Biden's cognitive disability that is yet to be addressed by the powers that be. And the Democratic Party wants to steamroll right over the issue. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about elections. And again, that's not a partisan point. It's a factual point. Where are they? How can you care about an election while throwing out the primary votes of 14 million Americans? How can you care about democracy when you decide to replace a candidate for president of the United States through fiat? I hereby declare that Kamala Harris is the new candidate. That's what Pelosi's saying. That's what Clinton is saying. That's what all the Democrats are saying. Although I don't know if Obama's saying that yet. He may have a different idea, but I'm sure he'll come around on that. And of course, there are these legal issues about removing him from the campaign or from the ballot in the various states. It's much more complicated when you get into that area, but I don't know. Are there legal issues with changing out the candidate like they proposed to do? Well, we're going to take a look at it. That's where we stand. In the meantime, we still have this terrible Biden corruption that's being pursued against Trump. We have the corruption of his Justice Department protecting him and his son from the full consequences, legal and otherwise, related to the powerful evidence of their criminal activities. I know everyone's writing their little history lessons on the Biden presidency, and it's all been, largely Democrat or left-leaning analyses. I mean, he's been acting as a dictator, embracing this communist approach to governance where he's been engaged in fiat management of the government, trying to jail his political opponents. That's not a presidency to be celebrating. So as far as I'm concerned, the left and this corrupt DC establishment shouldn't be allowed to have their cake and eat it too. They want to try to change out the candidate for president. It necessarily follows Joe Biden can't be president at all. So that's where things stand as of today. I said a few weeks ago that I heard from a source that Biden was leaving, and I thought he was going to leave the presidency. At least that was the word. I guess I was a few weeks late or early on that prognostication, right? But now he's out of the campaign. Just a few weeks before the convention, a few months before the election. It's chaos. And as I was talking to one of my colleagues today, he pointed out, he goes, the new word of the day is rally. All the Democrats are rallying around Kamala Harris. I mean, that's just party discipline. That has nothing to do with good governance and, as I say, democracy. But you can trust Judicial Watch to actually defend democracy, defend the rule of law, and hold these politicians accountable for what they aim to do in any way we can. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.